My name's Andrew Gurza. I'm a disability awareness consultant, cripple content creator, podcast host, and queer cripple. Cripple was like a bad word, and so it's a really derogatory word. It means invalid, it means you can't take care of yourself, it means you're less than. It's been prescribed to me you're less than. So, my thing was like, well, let's fucking take that word back. And let's transform it into something awesome. If I call myself a cripple, anything you say to me about disability can't hurt me. I know what all the prejudices are. I've heard them 1,000 times. So if I say, hey, I'm a cripple, this is who I am, none of that can hurt me. It's a word that I use as an armor for myself to deal with ableism. I want to make this video because we don't talk about sex and disability at all in our pop culture world generally. We're starting to very slowly, but especially in queer male culture, disability is not something we address. And I wanted to just bring it out there and play with it some more and to make it something palatable for this community. That's why I wanted to do this video. In order to how to fuck a queer cripple, you have to be ready to communicate. You really truly have to have hard conversations around what you're able to do, what you're not able to do, what you might need from a partner, what you might need from an attendant, how all those things work. If you're an able-bodied person and you want to sleep with a partner who's disabled, you have to open your mind to different possibilities, possibly not even getting off at all, different ways of looking at sexuality that isn't, oh, I just came and now we're done and that's sex. Ways of like, we spent some time together and that was nice. That even if you don't do it the normative way, if you can derive pleasure out of that experience and look at the disabled body in a different way than you may have done before, that's great. We're communicating about sex with me. You can't forget that I'm disabled in that experience. Talking about the disability as part of the experience is necessary when we talk about communication. So like, how am I going to get you out of your wheelchair? How am I going to do this? So okay, Andrew, your fantasy is this. The reality is this. Can we get somewhere in between of that to make this happen for you? Or I, as a disabled person, will be comfortable with this, but my non-disabled partner might not be comfortable providing me care for that. So how do we talk about all the stuff in between that when we think about sex, when our fantasies about sex, none of this stuff is happening, but when it actually gets down to actually having sex, all this stuff has to come into play, and we don't have the language to discuss the reality of sex and disability sometimes. So I think it's finding that space between fantasy and reality where disability and sexuality tends to live. I think they're receptive, but I think they're being told to not be receptive to it. I think they want that kind of discussions, but again, when we look at porn and we look at like mass communicating queer stuff, what do we see? White, cisgendered, able-bodied men fucking each other, which is great, and that's all well and good, but there needs to be a space for the rest of us to be included in there. And when you start adding people who are marginalized into these mixes of porn, you'll see communication has to happen. If you're fucking me or you want to fuck me or we're going to fuck, you have to realize that you're going to say something ableist, you're going to do something that I might not agree with, and that's okay. Recognize you did it, apologize for maybe doing it, and let's start again. If you're gonna say something inappropriate because you don't know, and that's okay, but it doesn't mean you can't acknowledge that it was wrong. It doesn't mean that if you have a disabled friend and you're sleeping with me, that therefore you're never gonna do something ableist. I think if we would just start acknowledging that we're all ableists a little bit, and once we recognize that, we can move forward and have better sex. The big takeaway around how to fuck a queer cripple is everybody should. It's fun. It's okay to notice that if you're doing it, that it's different. It's non-normative, and that's okay. And there's a power in that, of having sex with somebody who's different, and there's a fun, sexy moment in there that I think everybody should experience. People can find me at Andrew Gurza on Twitter, DisAftDarkPod on Twitter for the podcast, AndrewGurza.com, which is my website, or Disability After Dark, wherever you get your podcasts.
Or Grindr.
Or Scruff.
Scruff.